as Oodle, we have worked a lot with B2C brands, B2B brands, B2B2C brands, and everything in between. So speaking of which, quick survey. As a raise of hands, who is in B2B? Okay, about half the room. B2C? B2B2C? Or direct to consumer? Yeah, okay. So kind of a mixed audience, actually. Who's a human? Right? Marketers are obsessed with the differences between B2B, B2C, B2B2C, direct to consumer, all these different things, right? And while those things hold true and principles hold true, we are human beings, and in the digital marketing ecosystem, we navigate the web the same way, right? My 74-year-old dad is on Facebook, right? He researches products, he does his own research, he does all the same things that I do and that you do. And contrary to popular belief, even in B2B, I promise your buyers are on all those same things, right? So let's talk a little bit about why, for purposes of this presentation and all the principles we're going to hear, we're talking about not B2B, not B2C. I'm going to throw out some stats and factoids that apply to both categories throughout, but we're going to talk about why human to human is today's marketing principle. I know it's a buzzword, I know it's kind of a cliche, but it's true. We are all humans, we navigate all the same things in much the same way. So, start with some stats. 75% of the buyer journey is completed before anyone interacts with you. Why? Any questions or any maybe thoughts? Why is that buyer journey 75% done before anybody actually interacts with you? It's because we don't want to talk to people, right? I mean, think about the last time you made any sort of purchase in your life. How many YouTube videos did you watch about reviews? How many reviews did you look at on Amazon? How many people did you talk to in your circle about the product or service? Right? So you talk to a lot of different people. So 75% on average of the buyer journey, no matter what industry you're in, is done before you get an opportunity to convert. And it gets harder than that. You get them all the way to the point where they're like, okay, now I'm going to convert, right? We're a marketing qualified lead, everything's great. Then 79% of those never convert to sales, right? These are kind of like dismaying numbers. Just like, oh my gosh, so as marketers, we have like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction that might actually convert into something meaningful. Well, why is that? Well, some of that is this next stat. The cost of reaching all these consumers has gone way up, 70% in the last 5 years. We can thank COVID for that, which sort of awoken everyone to, we should throw all this money at digital advertising. People are not leaving their house anymore. So brands and organizations that never competed in these spaces, not only did they throw more money if they were, they entered this space. And so now your competition looks a lot different than it used to reach those same consumers. At the same time, marketing budgets should have kept pace, right? It should be like, my budget should be 70% because everything is more expensive. Have you been to like a McDonald's? I mean, that's maybe a bad example, but a McDonald's like Big Mac meal is like $12. I remember, like just 5 years ago, it was like $6. And the cost of everything has gone up, and marketing is no exception. But your budgets as marketers did not. On average, marketing budgets have only increased by 10% in the same time period, which means that to reach, convert, and do your job as marketers, you're like down 50% over that same time period. Well, no wonder we feel so stressed, right, as marketers. So if reaching, engaging, and converting are harder than ever, what are some principles as why? We talked about a couple of them. 1, competition has changed. 2, costs have increased. But we haven't talked about attention spans. In that same time period, we've been talking about this 5-year time period, attention spans were already short, right? Like less than a goldfish, 3 seconds or less. And now the competition has increased, that attention span is even worse. Factor in AI and all of the content behemoth junk that is kind of flooding the ecosystem, and now people don't know what to pay attention to, right? They're self-navigating, eating more, and they're so much more averse than ever to talk to anyone or, give you their information for fear of being flooded. The common answers that you get to some of these principles and questions are things like this. Always show your audience your brand purpose. Make sure that you do both demand gen and demand capture. Have you tried influencer? You should be growth hacking. I don't even know what that means. But make sure you personalize the content, right? These are all things that you've heard, right, as things that we should be doing as marketers. And while that's true, all these things are true, that's not exactly a practical way to think about how we actually activate some of this stuff. So what should you do instead, or in addition to? Well, I promised 5 guiding principles, 5 things that I think every marketer, especially if you're in a leadership position at an organization, needs to know about. And I'm going to root this in a problem that I want some audience participation in. Okay, so how many of you would be brave enough to say that you have an impatient C-suite? Yeah, right? How many of you would say that your expectations of what you're supposed to be doing in marketing might even be unreasonable or unfair? Yeah? Okay. How many of you would be brave enough to say, if your boss is not in the room, that maybe your boss doesn't understand how marketing works? Okay. I've heard a lot about, hey, this is my table over here, these guys. So, the principles of marketing are hard for anyone to understand that doesn't come from marketing. It is part art, part science. You've probably heard that 12 dozen times during this conference. And that is 100% true. The art part is so difficult for the C-suite to understand. They want numbers, right? It's all about, what are the results today? What have you done for me lately, is kind of the mentality. And that's not fair for marketers. It leaves all of us feeling frustrated. It leaves all of us feeling like we're failing, like, oh my gosh, we need leads today, or we need sales tomorrow. And so we're left thinking about short-term expectations, and we miss all the long-term outcomes. So what I'm going to do is talk about 5 principles that help us reroute and reground